If Mark Pope does not hire a GM right now, he is making a decision that will cost Kentucky for years to come.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of the show, we're going to talk about how important a GM will be for the Kentucky Wildcats. They have to hire one. Mark Pope doesn't want to seem to, and if he doesn't, it's going to set the program back for years to come. Also on today's episode, we're going to acknowledge Kentucky's injuries. Yes, the Wildcats haven't looked that good this season, but at the same time, they've had some really important injuries that have played a role in their misfortunes. Also, to wrap up the show, we're going to take a look at bracket matrix again and just reemphasize how important this final 3-game stretch of the regular season is for the Cats, because they need a 6th seed, and they need a 6th seed bad. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So Mark Pope is going to ruin Kentucky basketball if he does not hire a general manager. In case you didn't hear, this is the talk of the town today. Indiana just hired a GM right before the transfer portal opens, and everybody on social media is saying that's a great idea. You've got somebody that can be over the head of the program, kind of lets the coach do his thing, while you can also do a better job at recruiting and roster management and kind of handling turnover and money and all of that stuff. It gives somebody for Pope to kind of lean on here, especially considering he's working at one of the most prestigious programs in America that has the money to go out and get the talent that the Wildcats frankly need to succeed, and frankly, they don't have on their roster this year. Gives them time, Indiana, because they just hired a GM, to assess the roster, the needs, the potential needs, with guys that don't necessarily need to leave but might, the archetypes that they want to bring in for their personnel, etc. What a great decision by Indiana a few weeks before the transfer portal opens and all of this chaos hits us, for them to get a GM right now who has enough time to assess what's going on and then to accurately make decisions for the Hoosiers in the transfer portal to help make that roster better for 2027. Mark Pope continues to be wishy-washy as to whether or not he wants to hire a GM at Kentucky. It seems to be the consensus across the board that Mark Pope needs to hire a GM now. And he doesn't really seem to want to. In his weekly radio show, when asked about hiring a GM, he said, quote, "That's been an ongoing conversation for us. We've had a lot of conversations trying to find exactly the space that will work best for us. But, you know, as everybody figures this out, it's certainly a direction that some teams have gone with really incredibly varied levels of success. So we're probably having conversations about it on a weekly basis." A very fence-riding, word salad, coach speak answer that I don't really have time for, but I will dissect and criticize a couple of different things that are being pointed out here. He says that that's a decision to hire a GM that some teams have made with really incredibly varied levels of success. Okay, Mark, what are the best teams in college basketball doing in terms of hiring a GM and what they're doing with their roster? Well, Kyle Tucker, you might have heard that name before, used to be on the Kentucky beat, then left for a little bit. And now I believe he's like director of college basketball content at 24/7 Sports at Kyle Tucker CBB on Twitter. He noted that the best teams have a GM when he was asked on Twitter if they were valuable. Here's what Kyle Tucker said. The current Kim Pom top 4. Michigan has a GM. Duke has a GM. Arizona has a GM. Illinois, you betcha, has a general manager. Tucker said, "I reckon that's anecdotal, but I'd probably go ahead and hire a GM." If somebody like Tucker is saying that in his position, and we're looking and saying, okay, the 4 best teams in college basketball have a GM, 4 teams that are going to make deep runs in March, 4 teams that are going to have a shot to win a national title, definitely at least 3 of those squads, Illinois being so good on offense, they have to be in that conversation. And yet our head coach at the University of Kentucky, who can't seem to land a 2026 recruit to save his life, could not land the big fish in the transfer portal last year, is telling you it's conversations we're having on a weekly basis. Some teams out there, they've had some success with it. They've had some failure with it. We're having conversations to find exactly the space that will work best for us. What does that even mean? What is exactly the space? What does that even mean? What are you talking about? And then KSR pointed out earlier today, I believe this was Tyler Thompson who wrote this. If it was Jack Pilgrim, I'm sorry. As KSR pointed out earlier today, Pope himself brought up the idea of hiring a GM way back at his introductory press conference. Nobody asked him about it. He brought it up. Here's the quote. "It is so dynamic right now. The portal, NIL, conference realignment has changed so quickly. Building a staff now, you are not just looking for the skill sets for just recruiting, but considering GM positions that navigate a roster, considering NIL positions." So he was open to it. And then he started to sour on it. And the most interesting thing is that KSR actually asked him about it again in December. His most recent comments aren't even the most negative ones. When he was asked about it in December of 25, Pope said the position helped with manpower, sure, but it also hurt with the focus and the communication for the future of the program. Here's the quote from Pope from December. "I like it in terms of manpower for sure. I like it in terms of manpower. I like it in terms of the focus. In terms of the 24/7, just being solely focused on that. One of the ways where I think it can kind of hurt is the purpose is to purchase 1 degree of separation. There's also some danger that comes in that with terms of, I think sometimes it can be less beneficial for student athletes. I think sometimes it can be a bit problematic in terms of communication." I guess what he is trying to say there is if it's not coming from my mouth, it might be a little bit more difficult for student athletes to unpack or appreciate or even hear if it's coming from a general manager that they won't see on the floor, that's not going to be at practice, that's not going to be telling them what's going on in the middle of a game on the road at Arkansas. Like if they can't get that from the guy that they're going to be trusting for the next year plus of their life, what is that value? It might hurt if I, the coach, and they, the GM, are saying two different things about possibly their money and how their life at the University of Kentucky will work. That's fair. I feel like any sort of reasonable adult could find a way to work that out, especially if you, the head coach, are involved in the hiring process of a general manager. If you are able to not vet, okay, who is the perfect fit for me in terms of recruitment and roster management, but who is the best in terms of communication? Who can I sit down with, understand the most, like the most, get along with the most, and then we can go from there as to whether their skill set actually does fit the position that I want. Because at the end of the day, the GM position is kind of fluid. You do just kind of have to get, in my mind, some sort of body in the room that is competent and can communicate. That's just my 2 cents on it. Kentucky, if you want to interview me, I'd be down. Would I do the job well? That's a conversation for possibly another day. But again, this is another one of those quotes where it's like I'm not quite following here because I feel like, first of all, the first quote that he gave saying exactly the space that will work best for, I don't understand what he's trying to say there, especially knowing that incredibly varied levels of success isn't exactly accurate when you can look at the best teams in college basketball right now and they are killing it because they have a GM and good coaches. I think, Pope, you're a good coach. If you had somebody helping you out, would not be the worst thing in the world. Also, you don't seem to be that big in getting into bidding wars for players that you clearly wanted, both through the transfer portal and through the high school recruiting class. Maybe if you had somebody doing that for you, it'd be a lot better. You could take that off of your back. Kentucky could really help themselves if Mark Pope would wisen up to this, in my opinion. And them not hiring a GM right now is going to set the program back for multiple years to come. You want to know why? Because if they can't get players this offseason, we don't even know if Pope's going to be here next season. Or, excuse me, we don't even know if Pope's going to be here at the end of year 3, which my assumption is he's going to get a year 3. Because he's making the tournament this year, and we don't know what that run's going to look like. He's going to get a year 3. He's going to get a chance to do this again. If they don't hire a GM now, they're missing out on what Indiana's doing, getting ready for this portal cycle. And if they don't hire a GM in the offseason, they are still kind of screwing themselves over because they aren't ready, prepared enough quickly for the 2027 cycle. They need to do this right now if they want to have any shot at trying to bring Kentucky back to the status that it was at 3 or 4 years ago. Frankly, all the way, we haven't seen Kentucky at the level that we wanted to since I believe that 21-22 season, actually the first season that I was doing this show with you guys. This could really screw Kentucky for the long term if they don't start doing something now. We've talked a lot about JMI, about Pope, about Barnhart, about all of it kind of contributing to nothing in terms of talent acquisition, which is mind-boggling to think about at the University of Kentucky. And then quotes like this that not only are just, frankly, word salad bull crap, but also don't give a clear answer as to whether or not you are interested in doing the thing that's making some of the best programs in the country successful is very frustrating to hear as a fan when the roster that you put together this year and spent so much money on, I'll be careful with my words here, is not up to standard. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for you as a coach, and it's a bad look for the program. Kentucky's injuries, however, to, kind of throw some positivity into Pope's corner here to kind of help him out a little bit, Kentucky's kind of been screwed by injuries. So the roster you spent money on, we don't really know what that would have looked like at this point because at least 2 vital players to the rotation haven't been playing. And you can sit there in the comments and argue as to how good Jaylen Lowe or Jaden Quaintance would have been and how much Kentucky's ceiling would have been raised, but we don't fully know what the Wildcats would have looked like right now if they were on the floor and had been playing consistently from the beginning of the season. There's a lot of different things that we could point to and say, well, this, or well, this, or well, this, but Kentucky's injuries have to be acknowledged. This isn't excuse making, and I'll make that very clear here in a moment, but they have to be acknowledged. I'll tell you why in just a second. Before we do it, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. If you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip or two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole shebang. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Visit FanDuel.com to get started, use your profit boost on an NBA future, and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's episode is also brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season does not have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of trying to spend hours figuring out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or online, and they handle literally everything. W-2s, self-employed forms, and work to get you every deduction possible. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is actually handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right. Continuing along here on today's episode of the show, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Locked On Kentucky today. Subscribe. Make sure you get all of the latest episodes on your podcast feed, on your YouTube feed. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On UK. You already live your team every day, guys, but you can take it up a level. Go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Kentucky with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. You can go to lockedonkentucky.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. Kentucky's injuries have to be acknowledged. We can speculate and have discussions over all the different ifs, ands, or buts and hypotheticals as to what this team would or wouldn't be without him. But we do have to, at the very least, agree on this. The head coach of this team, the staff of this program, expected to have a full, healthy roster, and at least 2 starters are not available to them. 3, if you want to count what Cam Williams was doing starting before he got injured. The Wildcats were expected to have 3 meaningful contributors, starters, performing for them at this point in the season. We can argue about how good or bad those players would have been if they were playing right now. It is inarguable that the staff expected this team to be healthy. The bench was supposed to be deeper. The starters were supposed to be different. And everything was supposed to go differently, smoothly, I guess I should say. And again, you can sit there and argue and question, speculate over the strength and conditioning staff's role in the injuries. The decision to recruit Jaden Quaintance, knowing he was coming off of an ACL tear. The decision to recruit Jaylen Lowe, who was coming off of a broken finger, which I think hurt his shooting touch. And then Jaylen Lowe at 6'3", maybe, and 170 pounds soaking wet. Well, the decision to recruit him as your point guard. You could speculate and question how much stock we put into this team's performance right now, good and bad, without key players. So you can sit here and criticize and say, yes, Mark Pope and this team, they're still responsible for what has happened without those players. They've still been bad. It does not fully excuse what has happened this season, which has just been an immense failure relative to expectation and relative to the coach's expectation. Absolutely, because he was pretty audible about, or loud about, in the offseason about what Kentucky was going to be, a national championship contender. He kept saying, I think we can do it. This team's good. They're going to be good. They're going to be a good three-point shooting team. They're going to be better defensively. They're going to be good. We can also argue about the roster construction as a whole. Having one point guard heading into this year with a Caden Lewis leaving. You know, some of the decisions that were made in terms of which players play where, etc. But Kentucky's injuries have to be acknowledged when discussing the now and the future. Yes, 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 yes. This is the team Kentucky has now. The 8-man rotation, the 9-man rotation if you want to throw Jasper Johnson in. I don't think he should play a minute for the rest of the year unless Kentucky gets into foul trouble or they play a team that does not pressure the ball at all, which I don't think is going to be the case from here on out. This is the team Kentucky has now. They're not very good. But again, this wasn't supposed to be the case. This wasn't supposed to be what Kentucky was this year. And I know that injuries happen. You know that injuries happen based on what's happened to the Wildcats the last half decade. The expectation is to perform healthy. You don't go into a season saying, but what if we suddenly lose 3 players? That's not how you coach. Because if you did, frankly, Kentucky would be stuck in a perpetual hell where they continue to recruit fifth and sixth options off of other teams, and that's what their entire 12-man rotation is. Obviously, that's kind of what happened this year to an extent, but still, that would be the purgatory Kentucky would be stuck in forever if that were the logic. Oh, we have to be deep. Well, you can't spend all your money on incredible first option scoring options and first option defensive personnel, I should say. You don't have the money for that. You can get like 4 or 5 of those guys, but your bench would have to be pretty thin. So there's a give and take here. Not everybody has hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on a roster. Frankly, nobody does. Kentucky was supposed to go 3 deep at center. If Quaintance was healthy, BG might not be playing at all. And according to Evan Mia, on-off splits, there's no player on this team actively hurting Kentucky more whenever he is on the floor. Brandon Garrison is by far and away the worst contributor for Kentucky when he is on the floor, on-off splits. Kentucky is significantly better when he's on the bench. If JQ was healthy, it'd be Marino and JQ. And that's how Kentucky would be playing. Jasper Johnson would be on the bench. He might even be redshirted at this point because Denzel Aberdeen wouldn't have to play point guard. Jasper wouldn't have to play point guard that much. And whenever Lowe wouldn't have to play point guard that much if he was healthy. And then Denzel would come in and run stuff with the second unit, right? Trent Noah wouldn't have to play 19 minutes in an SEC road game against Auburn. That just wouldn't happen, right? This is the Kentucky team now. I get that. But this was supposed to look so much different. You can run to the comments and tell me why it was going to be bad with those players. You can run right now. But you don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody on Twitter knows. Pope doesn't know. Nobody knows because it's not happening. You can take the negative stance. I would probably lean more optimistic, but I certainly understand the negative stance, but neither of us truly know. But it is inarguable, and it has to be agreed upon that this was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be different. And you may not like to hear that. For whatever reason, you may like to hear it. But that is the reality. Knowing that, there's got to be some sort of leeway for this coaching staff. Some amount. You can, and I will leave that up to you for you personally as a fan, and what you think the fan base as a whole and college basketball as a whole should be looking at this team and saying in terms of, well, benefit of the doubt, leeway, etc. That is up to you to decide how you want to handle that. For me, I think I give this team a little bit of leeway, knowing that, okay, the team's not been that great. Some of the players don't gel well together. It's clear when they're on the floor, not in terms of teammates, but in terms of just personnel. Like you don't have anybody that can handle the ball well. That's what I mean. I don't mean in terms of personalities, etc. We're done with that. I give a little bit of leeway though, because it was supposed to be some pretty different personnel being at the forefront of this Kentucky squad and making a lot of decisions for UK. I read off all of the reasons why we can speculate. I read off all of the reasons why they would be different. Leave it in the comments below. Tell me, what do you think? Should they have any leeway? Any at all? What happens if Kentucky comes out in Mark Pope's third year and they make a Final Four with a really great team? With some pieces coming back from this year's roster that were supposed to be impactful this year. Most notably, Jaylen Lowe. What if he's the point guard on a Final Four team next season? Do we say different things about Mark Pope and Kentucky then? And about this year? Do we look back and say, well, hindsight is they lost some key contributors, and yeah, the roster wasn't built that well, but still, not having a point guard really does suck for 2/3 of the year. Actually, more than that, excuse me. You haven't had a point guard. Another thing I'll point out here, another great stat from evanmia.com. What Evan Mia does is it shows you what a player will, basically what their position is on the floor for their team. And then on a scale of 1 to 5, will also tell you if they are a facilitator, if they create their own stuff and create for others, if they're a creator, or if they are a receiver, basically, if they need things done for them in order to score or just make things work on the floor. And Kentucky doesn't have a single point guard, and they don't have a true 2. The closest that they have is Aberdeen at like 2.2, 2.3. It might be 2.4 actually out of 5. That's the best that they've got. Okay. And even Aberdeen, you could see in the 2.3, 2.4, like even he is not even a true 2. And that's who you have running your offense. You don't have an Amari Williams. You don't have an Andrew Carr who can bail you out at times. You don't have a Jaylen Lowe. You don't have a Lamont Butler. You don't even have a freaking Travis Perry, which I wouldn't want Travis Perry on this team, but you get what I'm saying. You don't have a true ball handling pass first guard who would run an offense. And some of the best teams in college basketball do. Frankly, Caden Boozer, who is not that good of an outside shooter, still a very good passer with the second best assist rate on the team. Still a very good passer. If you look at a team like Michigan, they're getting a lot of run out of Elliot Cadeau, who's top 40 in the country in assist rate, and their backup point guard, LJ Kaysen, is a baller. I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it again. LJ Kaysen would be a great ad for Kentucky next season. At 6'2", 195, he's shooting 40% from 3 and 60% inside the arc. Not the best free throw shooter, but he has been calm, cool, and collected and poised down the stretch here for the Wolverines. He'd be a great ad for Kentucky as point guard depth next season. If you want to get 2 guys, Kaysen would be somebody you throw a $1.5 or $2 million at. I don't know what he's getting paid right now, but he'd be worth the money to get some guard depth next season because I think he is incredible. You look at a team like Arizona, Jaden Bradley out here, high assist rate, pretty decent turnover rate as well. You've got a team like Illinois, who has Keaton Wagler, who has been insane. Kylan Boswell, who's been with the team forever, another really good distributor, great decision maker, great ball handler. Best teams in the country have guard depth. Best teams in the country have GMs. Kentucky can solve both of those problems next year. How much leeway do you give them now? I want to wrap up the show talking about the urgency, the wake up call. It's time to wake up now. If you were falling asleep listening to this podcast, I got bad news for you.
Wake up. Okay, wake up.
Because this is the stretch. This is the stretch for Kentucky. This is what could make or break their season. They have to get a 6th seed. We talked about it a little bit recently, and we'll talk about it again here in just a second. Before we do it, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at Mazda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is just sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who will actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute or so that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes at Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show, excuse me. Our show. It's Locked On Kentucky. It's your show too, technically. By saying you've heard about this podcast, support our show, your show, by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Kentucky. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Wrapping up today's episode, apparently I need to hire somebody to help me learn how to read and speak. I'll try to speak clearly to you whenever I say Kentucky's got to have some urgency over these final 3 games, and they didn't really seem to have it against South Carolina in a 9-point win at a game that they probably should have won by 30. Some questionable shot selection by Otega Owe, who had a bad night. Kentucky kind of getting suckered into taking jump shots when they really, really didn't need to. Beating South Carolina on the boards by 20, still not closing out on threes that well. And now you've got Vandy, A&M, Florida, gauntlet to close this out, the final stretch of the regular season. If Kentucky has not woken up already, they need to do so right now. If you did not see what happened to St. John's Wednesday night, I'm recording this right after it happened. First of all, don't go and watch it. That's M-rated television. Do not go and turn that tape on. I'll just tell you, against the Huskies, who are projected to be either a 1 or a 2 seed, more than likely the 4th 1 seed right now. UConn held St. John's, the team that Kentucky beat, to 40 points. 40. That was a team St. John's had already beaten, by the way. They beat them earlier this year at St. John's, but they held them to 40. Do you know how many field goals the Red Storm made in the second half? Guess. If you didn't, just guess. Say it out loud. 2. They made 2 field goals in the second half. I don't know if I framed that question perfectly, but they made 2 field goals in the second half. That's your number 1 seed. That team might be on the 2 line for at the end of the year. Wake up, Kentucky. You're right now an 8 seed in most bracketologies. According to Bracket Matrix, you're a 7, but I don't think most of them have updated yet. Guess what you're getting, brother? If you fall to an 8, and you somehow miraculously beat the 9 seed, and that's a coin flip for all I care right now, you get to play Duke, Michigan, Arizona, or Connecticut. They would blow you to smithereens. You would be a red mist by the time they were done with you. If you want to make a run in the NCAA tournament, you have to get a 6 seed. And you can come at me in the comments and say, Lance, we're Kentucky. We're not afraid of anything. How could you run from competition? You want to make a deep run? You want to make a deep run? You would avoid any of these teams at all costs. I would say this if Kentucky was a 2 seed in this bracket. I would say this if Kentucky was a 3 seed in this bracket. I would say, man, I'd stay away from Duke or UConn or Michigan or Arizona for as long as I possibly could. Because I would rather see them in the Elite 8 or Final 4 and hope that they just stumbled before they played my team. Frankly, that's what Kentucky used to be. Sure isn't right now, but that's the reality, okay? You can say, we're Kentucky, we don't run from anything. This team ain't beating a 1 seed. And if they do, again, like I've said, I will eat a hat on this show. I will live stream it, and I will eat an entire hat on this show. I withhold the rights. Well, that's not the right term. I am allowing myself to have condiments on standby in case needed. I can do what I need to the hat in order to consume it, but I will eat one, Doug Dimmadome style, on this show if they beat a 1 seed in this NCAA tournament in a round of 32 game. Those are the parameters. You heard it all there. So clip it if you need to. I will eat the hat joyfully, okay? My doctor may not be happy about it. I sure will be. If it results in death, so be it. But they have to get a 6 seed. Because guess what? You get that 7 seed line? Cool, buddy, cool. Guess who you're more than likely playing according to Bracket Matrix? UCLA, don't want to play them in Donovan Dent in that defense from hell. Don't want to play them. Texas, a team that offensively is incredible that you did already beat, but it was close in your own gym. Don't want to play them in a neutral floor when I know Kentucky doesn't get up for anything. You have to play Auburn, a team that already beat you. Or Texas A&M, a team that might beat you here in a week. Do you want to play any of those teams? Do you want to possibly play Indiana again? No, I don't want to. I don't want to play a 3-point shooting team. They had a bad night the first time. I don't want to play them again and just hope they don't shoot well from 3 again. I don't want to play Miami, Ohio. Because the whole country's going to be watching that one if the Redhawks are still undefeated. I don't want to play Santa Clara out of the West Coast Conference. I don't want to play TCU. I don't want to play UCF. UCF scares me the most out of any of these teams because who did they just beat the snot out of in Big 12 play? I'm so sorry I'm doing this live. They just beat BYU 97 to 84. At one point in that game, at halftime, it was 52-28 in favor of UCF. You want to play them? By the way, BYU has potentially the number 1 overall pick on their roster. I understand Saunders is out for the year. They have incredible talent still. And they were up 50. UCF was up 50. You want to play that team in the round of 64? Pray you don't get another teammate injured. And then, oh, look, here comes Michigan in the round of 32? No, I don't want to. No, thank you. No, thank you. And you know what can save you from that? If you want to make anything out of the end of this year, what will save you from that is winning. You play 2 of these games at home. At home. Rupp should be so insane on Saturday against Vanderbilt that they have to stop the game because the building might come down. That's how crazy Rupp Arena should be this Saturday. Next Saturday, it should be like it's on fire. It should feel like that to the Florida team that walks in here next Saturday. It should feel like the building is going to come down at any moment because they can't buy a shot. That's what it should feel like. The fan base should be urgent. They should feel urgent for this team. Instead, I guarantee you, swaths of those games are going to be just completely dead silent because people are going to be sitting in the lower bowl, arms crossed, going, man, I don't want to. This is not a shot at any old person. Literally anybody who sits down there and just silent, just, man, if they're not playing well, I won't cheer. Just you got to do something. Be a factor. But this team has to be even more urgent than that. Dial in. You remember what it felt like to go into Arkansas, play poised, play under control, play effort, play with effort, play with energy, play with intent, play with intelligence. You play smart, hard, fast basketball. You have to do that here against Vandy. You have to do it against Florida. And yes, I'm leaving Texas A&M out because they're on the road. That's another team you could beat too. You could beat them too. Urgency. You get to Nashville, you know who's going to show up in Nashville? Big Blue Nation. We are going to show up in Nashville, Tennessee. You have to capitalize on that. You have to capitalize on it not being a neutral site anymore. It's a home game for us. 6 seed is in shot. Frankly, a 5 seed is still in the realm of possibility if Kentucky wins out, which I have no idea what this team's going to do. They've got to get a 6 seed. They've got to avoid that top 8. Florida, Nebraska, Gonzaga, Kansas. More than likely, they're going to stick us with Nebraska or Kansas. If they give us Nebraska, which they know how valuable the NCAA tournament committee does, they know how valuable our fans are to this tournament, and they know how valuable an upset would be to this tournament coming from a team like Kentucky. The NCAA tournament committee knows that, and if you think that's not in the back of their mind for the revenue that they can generate with this, you are lying to yourself. Do you know how Kentucky got that draw last season? It was by the grace of the NCAA tournament committee to see if they could get the Wildcats on a roll. They gave them the perfect path. That was the perfect path to the Final Four. Incredible what they did. They will give us a draw. They will give us a draw. If they give us the Cornhuskers, it's the best shot. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you they're going to win that game. Let me be clear. The internet loves to do this thing, and there's a big meme about it where if you go out and tweet and say, I like pancakes, and another person will say, oh, so you don't like waffles? No, that's another sentence. What are you talking about? Nebraska would be on paper and in terms of vibes, and I think a lot of you would agree with this, the easiest team to play out of those other 3 seeds. If Michigan State got up to a 3 seed, they would be, I would take either them or Nebraska just because I would like a rematch with Michigan State. And I don't know if they're as good as what the final score indicated the first time these two teams played. But I'm saying here, the Cornhuskers would be a very likely draw for UK, and that would be in the round of 32 if they win their 6-11 matchup. Which, by the way, if you want to talk about that as well, I mean, you're looking at a team like Belmont, a team like New Mexico. You could play Missouri again, potentially. Like, there are teams you could play in that 11 seed line that would be more favorable matchups. Even if a team like Miami, Ohio slid down, I'd rather take them over UCLA. I'd rather take a team like TCU over Texas. I would rather take a team like Santa Clara over Auburn. I just would. Climb as high as you possibly can and let it sort itself out to go on a run. You got to be desperate. Urgency. Wake up. Wake up, Kentucky. You have sleptwalked through for the last 2 weeks, you've been sleepwalking. Someone needs to slap this team in the face a few good times with a cold, wet hand and tell them to wake up. Because now's the time to play hard. Now's the time to play like you are going to die if you don't win. Urgency. That's going to do it for today's episode of the show. 38 minutes. Holy cow. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Subscribe if you have not already. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. Follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of the show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And God bless. Bye.